Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. My name is Bill Ryan. I'm the Acting Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Joining me today are Shane Scanlon, Assistant DA in Lackawanna County, here on behalf of District Attorney Andrew Jarbola. Shane is also cross-designated in this particular case. Also with us, Mayor Chris Doherty from the City of Scranton. Mayor, thanks for being here. Also, the police chief from the City of Scranton, Dan Duffy. Dan, thank you for being here. I see Tim Doherty also here. And John Soprano, Regional Director of BNI, our BNI office for the Office of Attorney General in Wilkes-Barre. Also, the Chief Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, excuse me, Larry Cherba. By chief, I mean he's been the person I've been going to, the overall supervisor of this important investigation. And Larry is from the Attorney General's Drug Strike Force section. We are here today to announce a wave of drug-related arrests, which began yesterday and continued this morning, linked to violent drug gangs operating in the Scranton area. The investigation, known as Operation Sunset, focused on a network of drug dealers and runners responsible for the distribution and sale of an estimated $750,000 worth of crack cocaine, marijuana, and LSD over the past 6 months. This was a joint investigation involving the Attorney General's Office, the Scranton Police Department, the Lackawanna County District Attorney's Office, and it was also assisted by a number of other state and federal law enforcement agencies. During the course of the investigation, we actually identified 2 separate Scranton organizations, both believed to be linked to the Bloods street gang in the city of New York. Both were supplied with drugs and sometimes dealers and runners by gang sources in the city of New York. Both of these organizations allegedly supplied drugs to a wide-ranging group of street-level dealers and customers throughout the Scranton area, and charges have been filed against more than 40 people who allegedly played a role in keeping these organizations in business. Specifically, we charged 42 people, 36 of whom are in custody. Crack cocaine was typically sold in $50 or $100 bags, which dealers labeled small boys or big boys, depending on the dollar value of the sale. Marijuana was described using many different street names based on the grading and quantities involved, while the term eye drops was used to discuss LSD. We used court-ordered wiretaps, surveillance, undercover operations, and controlled drug purchases. And by use of all of these different types of investigative tools, agents tracked the flow of drugs and money through these 2 organizations. Between January and May 2011, investigators monitored more than 1,100 drug-related telephone conversations, providing an extremely detailed view of these particular drug operations. A full list of all the individuals being charged is included in the press release that you all should have. So most of our discussion this morning will focus on how these drug gangs operated and the primary figures involved. One of the Scranton groups was headed by Derek James Ward, also known as Boss, who is actually from the Bronx. The other group was controlled by a defendant by the name of Junior Jackson, known on the street by the name Horse. These 2 drug networks operated side by side, often selling from the same locations, including the Sun Hotel in the city of Scranton. They also used go-betweens from New York and Scranton to help settle disputes about local drug territories or supplies. While these 2 organizations may have tolerated each other, the potential for violence remains strong, including suspected links to a still unsolved drug-related homicide in the city of Scranton that occurred in late last year. That fatal shooting in December 2010 of Michael Jackson remains under active investigation and was a key factor in the initiation of this joint investigation. Using cell phones and typically operating from the Sun Hotel, which was often referred to as the business, quote unquote, Derek Ward allegedly communicated with a network of dealers, customers, runners, and suppliers on a daily basis. Ward was assisted by another Bronx resident, Rashad Roper, who reportedly served as a type of human resources director for the gang. Roper recruited potential dealers and runners from New York, arranged transportation to Scranton, and then worked to resolve any complaints about the individuals he would bring down to help operate the organization. This was a wide-reaching and well-organized operation that focused on responding to drug orders and completing sales as quickly as possible. Gang members were scolded for keeping customers waiting, cautioned about maintaining the quality of the crack cocaine, and encouraged to market and promote new items in order to help pop or increase sales. According to the investigation findings, Ward was also assisted by Quincy Buckley of Scranton, who allegedly supervised sales involving a number of mid-level dealers. These other dealers include James Mendy of the Bronx and Ransford Robinson, who often operated from a house on the 800 block of Caphouse Avenue in the city of Scranton. The Junior Jackson organization operated in a similar manner, working side by side at many of the same locations frequented by Derek Ward's network of dealers. And they would literally work side by side, sometimes not even talking to each other, but at least cooperating to the point that they could stand there and run their organizations separately and, we allege, profitably. Kashawn Spencer, also known as Dredd, was often stationed by Jackson at the Sun Hotel, serving an entirely separate group of customers from the Ward organization. Another member of the Jackson gang, Karim Jones, is accused of using the same Caphouse Avenue home as Ransford Robinson as base for his own drug sales. Jones also served as an intermediary between the Jackson and Ward gangs, purchasing drugs from both and delivering money to both men, and occasionally addressing disputes or concerns raised by either. Agents identified several other mid-level dealers in the Jackson organization, including Ralph Kemper, also known as Junior, and Kayuradapak, also known as Jay Cool, both of the city of Scranton. Based on information developed during the investigation, agents and local police officers executed a series of search warrants yesterday and this morning, targeting the residences of numerous suspected members of these drug organizations, along with other locations linked to the gangs. The investigation demonstrates how effective cooperation between local, state, and federal law enforcement can be in quickly targeting criminal organizations. We will continue to work together to vigorously attack the flow of illegal drugs into Pennsylvania communities and swiftly respond to violence that is often triggered by drug-related disputes. The defendants will be prosecuted in Lackawanna County by Senior Deputy Attorney General Larry Cherba of the Attorney General's Drug Strike Force section, along with Lackawanna County District Attorney Andy Jarbola's office. I want to thank a number of agencies for their cooperation and assistance with this investigation, including the Lackawanna County DA's office, the Scranton Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, the U.S. Marshals Service, Pennsylvania State Police, and the Pennsylvania Bureau of Liquor Control Enforcement. Now, if I can, I'd just like to go to especially this particular chart that gives you an idea of the people we're talking about. Derek Boss, obviously one of the leaders, Junior Horace Jackson, another, both members of the Bloods, both we know having relationships and allegiance to other Bloods in New York, taking direction from New York. Much of this seems to have been operated out of New York. Rashad Roper comes down from New York to provide assistance with runners, dealers, to to Ward does not stay long in the area. In fact, sometimes comes down from New York, stays no longer than 15, 20 minutes, and is gone back to New York. But he's also the individual who apparently Ward would go to, or Buckley would go to, if there were problems about the people he was bringing down. The quality of the people wasn't good, he would address the issues. Buckley was a lieutenant for Ward, moving the drugs also through James Mendy and Ramsford Robinson. The other side, Horace Jackson, again out of New York, dealing through Keshawn Dred Spencer, and through them Karim Jones, Ralph Kemper, and Adiak Peck, this gentleman on the right. The two locations that were often used to the point that it stuck out to us in law enforcement were the Sun Hotel, the Capels Avenue Scranton property, and as I said before, both of these organizations, despite perhaps inability to get along and cooperate in a way that they could be one organization, still were able to use both of these locations as well as other locations to distribute crack cocaine and other substances in the area of the city of Scranton. Now, I will be happy to answer any questions you might have, but before that, I want to give the gentleman with me an opportunity to speak. First, Mayor Doherty.
Good morning, everyone. General, thank you very much. Really, on behalf of the citizens of Scranton, we are most thankful for the work of the Attorney General's office, obviously the District Attorney's office, and our own Scranton Police Department. As you see, this has a major impact in our city, not only in crime, but in quality of life of certain neighborhoods. And I can tell you from this point on, the city is going to be extremely active in not only targeting these areas, but in the establishments that are still open. And that what we can do is our role as local officials to make a difference. This has had a tremendous impact on our city, and it wouldn't have happened without the efforts of the Attorney General's office, quite frankly. Giving us their resources, financial as well as manpower, and working with our police department in particular, obviously under Chief Duffy's purview. So I just really want to emphasize what an impact this has, and we're not done. This is going to continue from our standpoint. We're going to be pushing it harder and harder, and to make sure we rid this forever. But thank you very much, General. Great job.
Thank you. Chief?
I want to thank the Attorney General's office. I want to thank the District Attorney's office of Lackawanna County for assisting us with this investigation, all the other law enforcement entities, the civilian support staff. Also, most importantly, are the men and women who work behind the scenes, who really put this investigation together, are the ones that'll never be out in front of the camera. I'm so proud to be their spokesman, though. And I can tell you, I saw a lot of hard work put in by the men and women, the undercover agents involved in this. And you know, often in law enforcement, we don't really see the fruits of our labor. However, if you see this board right here, this is a significant amount of people that were taken off the streets in our city. And now the associates of these people, I'm giving a stern warning. I've been saying it over and over again in the city of Scranton. Do not come to our city if you're going to engage in criminal activity. And this is a prime example. We're going to reach out to other law enforcement agencies, and we're going to continue to arrest people who are in here committing crimes. So I just want to let the criminal element know, be warned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Scanlon.
Thank you, General. I would again just like to reiterate mostly what has been said. I want to thank the Attorney General's office for helping us with this investigation. I want to thank the police officers who worked around the clock tirelessly for the last few months. And I'm going to reiterate what Chief Duffy said. If you're coming into our area to sell drugs, we are gunning for you. It's only a matter of time. We will get you. Thank you.
And if I could kind of post to that, ladies and gentlemen, I've been in law enforcement a long time, and we all know that law enforcement can be somewhat competitive, but a competition that's great in a football field can destroy good law enforcement if all of us at all levels, federal, state, local, don't cooperate. And I think this is a classic example of where all of the levels of law enforcement have cooperated to the benefit of the people of Scranton and the entire area up here in this part of northeastern Pennsylvania. And I thank all of the participants I have mentioned for their participation and for their enthusiasm, because it's the only way we get it done. There's no one of us big enough to handle the kind of problems we have with the drug dealers in this country, in this state, all by ourselves. We all have to cooperate. So, with that, any questions?
That's a fine question for you. Talk about the intricacy of this business. This business had human resources, customer service. I mean, how large was it, and what does it take to take down an operation like this?
Well, it was obviously large. You can see from the number of people involved in it, and this was just during the period of time that we were focusing on the organization, especially with the wiretaps. What you see is a good number of people being able to coordinate, not only here in the area, but all the way up into New York, to bring dope down, to bring it down in smaller amounts, to bring it down quickly when needed, so that they don't get caught with massive amounts of dope because somebody screws up. And I think that's one thing we're seeing in law enforcement more and more, that some of these organizations have become sophisticated enough that they're going to use the manpower they have to. They're going to take the effort, make the effort they have to, but they don't want to be caught with huge amounts. And what we see here is the constant dealing, especially of Ward Jackson with New York, going to New York. Ward spent a lot of time in New York. Roper comes down here, goes back, and what you see is the real investment of manpower to make this work. From our standpoint, it means we have to put more people on the street doing surveillance. We have to make better use of confidential informants, and most of all, it makes wiretaps just absolutely vital. Without them, we can't piece this all together. It's impossible.
Can you talk about the suspected link to the unsolved homicide investigation?
All I can tell you is that from the evidence we have right now surrounding the death of this individual, we have reason to believe that there is a connection between his death and this operation. We can't say anything beyond that at this point. But we have enough evidence to tell us that while it may have been a coincidence, it's kind of hard to believe that this individual's death, at the time it happened, given everything else we know, was a coincidence.
Could you say, was he maybe a member of one of these two organizations?
We can say he was active, yes. Yes, that we can say.
Was Michael Jackson related to Junior Jackson?
To my knowledge, he was not.
The fact that he was a part of this operation, is that what sparked this link?
That would be yes, I would say that, yes.
Okay.
Can you tell us about the suspects, people on the other board over there? Can you just explain that a little bit?
Depending on who they are, some of them were runners, lower level dealers, taking direction and getting dope from people over here, and some of them were also users. So they're broken down between one or the other. Okay?
Thank you.
Question for Chief Duffy, if I may. Chief, how many of these faces and names are familiar to Scranton Police? How many of these people have you encountered before?
A lot of them.
Okay.
A lot of them that are up there. And no matter what organization they affiliate themselves with, whether they call themselves Bloods, whether they call themselves Crips, in the end, they're one big gang of criminals. That's what it comes down to. So, and I've been saying this for a long time, I'm not going to exhaust my resources into identifying who they associate themselves with as far as the organization goes. But if they're an organized group of people who are committing crime, well, I don't care, what they say they are. As far as I'm concerned, they're one big group of criminals, and that's what we focus on, is the activity that they engage in. Because the activity they engage in leads to crime in our community, and then it leads to violence. So this is, I'm thrilled with this investigation, to be honest with you. And yesterday, the officers worked so hard. They took such a significant amount of people off the street in such a quick time We have, I believe, all but 6 at this time apprehended, and those 6 will surely be apprehended.
Obvious.
I probably can't release this, but any links to more operations that you guys know about, you guys are on it?
Any links to others?
Yeah, maybe.
No.
Okay.
None that we could talk about.
Obviously, we had the Sun Hotel here, the Hotel Sun, which was
Right.
one of the mainstays. Are there other, I don't know if this is maybe more for city officials, other places in the city that you're targeting where something may be going on? Obviously, there's been so much focus south side and bringing that area back.
If we recognize a crime pattern and we get information, we're going to focus our efforts in any way we can. Whether we reach out to other law enforcement entities to help us in a case like this, or whether we handle it by ourselves as a police department. But we're going to focus on every one of them. So long as I'm the chief, I can guarantee that we're not going to stop with this. All right, it's just going to keep going. And like I said before, my interest is I want to know every associate of these people now. I want to know who they're smoking crack with. I want to know who they're dealing crack to, because I want to go and arrest them too. So.
Chief, do you believe that the person who killed Michael Jackson, that his picture's on that board?
I can't give that information right now. Given the course of the investigation that's actively taking place right now, I can't release that.
Okay? Thank you all. Appreciate your coming.